Hello gamers, and welcome back to the Board Game Co channel. I'm Professor Meg, and I am joined today with...
Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
Hello, Alex.
How are you doing, Meg? How's your evening going?
Pretty good. Pretty good. My evening, I guess in this particular night has been very busy, filled with back and forth running around, but, you know, as the usual Professor Meg night is. My day was filled with sleeping, so that's good. How are you?
Doing good. My day was spent not running around, sitting in one space, playing a lot of games, filming a bunch of videos. Did I do a live stream today? I did not do a live stream today, but I did basically everything else. Read 3 rulebooks.
What a shame.
Yeah, it's been a busy day. It's been a busy day.
And we'll get into the questions in a second. That is the question for anyone who hasn't seen this series before. This is a way for the viewers to be able to have a conversation about To Back or Not To Back after it comes out on Monday by the end of the week. But before we jump into that, Alex, quite a few people in the last video, they said that they enjoyed you talking slower and your calm nature for this video, which I thought was very interesting because I didn't expect us to be so calm.
So speaking of being busy, I actually haven't taken out time. Last week I prepped for it well. I went through all the questions, kind of just like had a brief, making sure I'm on top of it. This week I did not have a chance to look at the To Back or Not To Back comments, nor that is the question comments. I'm sure I've seen them. I always have an eye on my comments.
You answered a lot of comments on that video. You do pretty well.
I try, but like I didn't prep for this video, so I had no clue. I didn't see any comments about the slow-paced nature of things, which I will attempt to slow down and talk as zen-like as I possibly can while Meg slowly interviews me on whatever the questions you asked are.
Alex Radcliffe, our first question is, William over on Patreon said, "Hey Alex, any thoughts on Catharsis? I'm considering going in on their new Kickstarter for maybe just a base pledge and give it a try. Boss Battle or Dice Throne sounds like it has potential, and it looks like they have their older content in stock on their web store, so no FOMO on not all inning."
So, Catharsis is an interesting one. It's one that I kind of missed. It wasn't on my radar, which it does happen, but I would say more often than not. We talked about this a bit last week. Make sure to watch last week's episode of That Is the Question. But in general, I try to cover a lot of games, and there is a decision point as to why I don't cover certain games. In the case of Catharsis, and Meg, have you seen Catharsis at all?
I have not.
Yeah, so it's one that's the thing for me. It kind of missed my radar entirely. I actually saw William's question, but by the time I saw it, that week's episode had already been done, and it was in the last few days. It was ending. The description that I've seen was boss battling Dice Throne, but I did see it actually at Origins. I remember seeing it at Origins, and I did look it up after, and it's one that, to me, the art and graphic design didn't pull me in. So there's two different things. I missed it as far as covering Kickstarter. Just straight up missed it. It wasn't on any of my radars, which again is rare, but it does happen. But for the game itself, the style of Boss Battle of Dice Throne sounds like a very cool terminology. It kind of reminded me of Soulforge Fusion in the visual appeal and aesthetic of it. And Soulforge Fusion was a game that personally I loved, but I love the mechanics, but the graphic design didn't pull me in to the point that it didn't get pulled off the shelf. It is a regular problem. Recently I had this with an active Kickstarter called Feud, where I kind of wanted to give Feud a 4 out of 5 based on mechanics alone, but the presentation doesn't pull me in, and I've started to dial back those ratings. Art and graphic design and visual appeal, if they are components that help me bring a game to the table, then they're factors. Dice Throne is actually a good example of a game that I think is a little mechanically not as appealing as I'd like, but the appeal is stronger, and those things do pull up or pull down a game. So, on a personal level, intrigued by Catharsis. I'd happily try at some point, but visually it wasn't pulling me in enough.
Now, when I think about visual issues with games, I think of two things. And one is just the art in general and the art style, but I think something that's just as important is the graphic design of how they lay out their cards and things like that, that it's a huge accessibility thing where, you know, if you can easily look at a card and understand that's my damage, that's my defense, and things like that, I think that really makes a game go a long way as well. With this one, was it more just the art, or was it how it was presented?
I think it was presentation more than art, because I agree with you 1,000,000%. I've said to creators time and time again, it is graphic design more than art. Art is a factor, but good graphic design can elevate mediocre art, versus the reverse is not nearly as true. Great art can be obfuscated by mediocre graphic design. So I'd have to take a look at it. Instinctively, I don't have it in my brain right now, but instinctively, my recollection was that the graphic design wasn't making the game pop for me, but that the art may well have had good art behind it.
Yeah, for me it is really like accessibility thing, because when the barrier to entry is learning things that aren't intuitive, I think that makes it so much harder that you really need to love the game to push you to want to learn that aspect.
Yeah, and there are games in my collection that I do love that have not the best art. Terraforming Mars would be a classic example of that. But I think that for me, it really does have to be elevated to that next level. I can't just really like it.
Yeah.
I have to love it for bad art to not be a blocker.
Yeah, I completely agree. So our first question from this week, that was a previous question. Oh goodness. Zylebo said, nice new show. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I clicked on something. They said, nice new show format. Appreciate the possibility of posting some questions in advance in case not being able to hit the live Q&A. I would appreciate a short ranking of the Terraforming visual add-ons, how useful to rate them, third res, status minis. Also, would it raise the chance of being asked if the question is posted on Patreon?
Ooh, great question. So, as far as raising
I would
the
say
question...
maybe answer the Patreon question first.
Yeah. So the Patreon question, I don't necessarily know. I would say that in theory, it should raise the chances of it being answered if it's posted on Patreon. In practice, is that something that we're going to be mindful enough of? I don't know. I'll say that I will try to make an effort, or will try to make an effort to make sure that Patreon questions are answered first and foremost, but no guarantees. As far as the question itself, did they have a listing of what the Terraforming add-ons were?
This is when I thought maybe you would have prepared for this, so, because last week you did. So
Yeah.
I thought maybe you'd be like, oh yes, this, and this.
So last week I did prepare for this, and that's on me. But I know they had the... It's that thing, I didn't follow...
Maybe, Alex, I mean, you can try to do it now. I didn't realize you would just do it on the fly. You absolutely can, or that would maybe be a good idea for a short, is just a quick one ranking those, and then they can tune in there.
Possibly a short, or possibly we can always call it back next week.
That's true. That's true as well. We can start at the top of next week. Okay. Steve Jones 6910 says, I have a question for that as a question. This is concerning free gifts for content creators and why they want to show off their free gifts. Recently, the 1 million user box went out to content creators, which, if no one knows what they're talking about, it's from Gamefound. And some, not all, chose to show us what's in the box. Saw photos online but haven't seen an unboxing video yet, but I bet they are coming. Similarly was the sword from Chip Theory Games. The question is, should content creators receive gifts? No, the question is not should they receive gifts. The question is, do content creators feel the need to show us the free gifts? Is it to help get views and possibly generate more revenue? Is it that they think the rest of us have zero chance of receiving said gift and would need this information? Are they generally just excited and want to share their good fortune?
So, a few different things, sir. First of all, you already answered to us on yourself that you're not asking about whether they should receive gifts. I would say, as a content creator, I do receive different types of gifts. I think I've received 1 or 2 holiday gifts, like, hey, it's been great working with you. There's a particular agency called Off Duty Ninja. Actually, no, they didn't do it. They didn't. It was somebody else. I can't remember what it was, but there have been agencies who I've worked with who have sent gifts in the past, and I don't share those at all because that's a kind of, hey, appreciation, has been great working with you, here's a nice little token of appreciation. But I think that with things like the sword, with things like the Gamefound box, things like that, for me, I can answer on behalf of myself, I can't answer on behalf of everyone. Not a single time have I ever received a gift with the note of, please show this off on your channel. But I do have a sense of when that publicity is something that could be beneficial for the person sending the gift and or might be wanted. So, for example, in the case of the Gamefound box, and disclaimer, I work for Gamefound, that was a celebrating 1 million users and celebrating the growth of the platform. And so, obviously, the box being sent was like a, hey, we're celebrating the growth of the platform. It would be great if that was like kind of shared and there was buzz and hype and all that stuff. Was it essential? Was it required? No. And in fact, speaking as a person who works for Gamefound, I can tell you that the vast majority, not the vast majority, but I'd say it, about half the people who received that box didn't post about it at all, and they were under no obligation to do so. But the other half kind of took it, at least, again, myself being an example, like with the Chip Theory sword, I take it as, wow, this cool thing was sent to me that I do appreciate, and I don't mind returning the favor. I'm never, personally speaking, I'm not going to sit there and tell you that I like a game that I didn't like. That's a disservice to my audience. But helping spread that marketing thing as a kind of goodwill gesture, like, thanks for the sword, I'll post about it, there's general buzz, there's general hype, to me, it costs me nothing. It is returning the favor of a gift that was sent that was nice, and it doesn't really, in theory, for the most part, it doesn't necessarily cost the audience things. There is an interesting question and conversation to be had about, are you costing the audience things? Are you in some way using your audience by posting things they may not want to see? And my big thing is I try not to post things that I don't think they'd want to see. I think the sword was cool. I think it was a cool thing for people to engage with. And yes, inherently, it's a bit fascinating. Like Meg, do you watch any, like, have you ever seen any channels that are like lifestyle channels? Like, hey, we're a family and we live in a mansion and all that stuff.
Just in general?
Yeah, like in general, you know, like those like lifestyle family vloggers that like look under the Lamborghini we just bought.
Not really family ones, but individuals, yeah. I've seen.
So why do you think those exist? Why do you think someone's on YouTube posting with the Lamborghini they just bought? Wouldn't that just be annoying to everyone watching?
Yeah, I don't know.
But yet they do well.
I think this is a very... I understand what you're saying, because I think this is a very different... there are a lot of ways to look at it, because for me and my perspective, like, I am just excited. Like, I still can't understand and fathom that I am someone in this space. That doesn't make sense to me. To me, I'm still just someone that wakes up, plays board games, and goes to bed, and I cook my own food and play with my dog. Like, that's what I do. So the fact that I get a sword with my logo on it, that I... You know, it just... That stuff blows my mind that I am beyond excited. So... For me, and especially my audience really enjoys watching me open things and get excited and, you know, kind of just get things that are really nice. Like, what's wrong with that? So,
but that's
I think
the
it
question.
depends what your audience is focused on. But, you know, I think that for me, they can be excited for me and just leave it there. I think.
So that's kind of the mental game I'm playing with the Lamborghini family channel, whatever it is. Like, the idea that there is obviously the possibility that by receiving something that no one else is getting and showing them, there's the possibility that you're inciting jealousy and negative feelings. But for whatever reason, sometimes there's just that shared enjoyment. Look at that cool thing you got. Right. Why am I excited about the cool thing you got? I don't know, but people are. Now, the problem with having an audience is you post it to thousands of people, and maybe 80% are happy and cool sword and they're excited, and they're not really excited for them, but like it's cool, it's something fun to see. And there could be like 20% look at it and be like, wow, I wish I had a sword, why'd you have to share that? And that is an interesting conversation. I would say for me, the ratio of negative feedback to anything I do helps guide the channel in the directions I want to take it. For the most part, gifts have not been enough of a problem in terms of the negative feedback I've gotten from my audience for me to think that I should stop sharing those. So right now I stick with the status quo of publisher sent me a thing. If I think the publisher could benefit from the thing, and if I don't think I'm doing a disservice to my audience, I get content, the publisher gets marketing, and the audience gets to see something cool. It's a win-win-win.
Yeah. All right, moving on. So this is a follow-up to last week. So why Lean6508 said, just a background for Harvest as I was following the campaign from the start. This was the one that there was a question about what you thought of their stretch goals, and there weren't any. So they said they actually started with stretch goals revealed based on the number of backers, and the jump for the third stretch goal was quite big, from 2,500 to 3,500 backers. When they realized their campaign has stalled, they revised to 3,000 backers, but the number of backers from then onwards became stagnant. After a few days, they gave up on stretch goal reveal and decided to do the promo pack by revealing all stretch goals. So that's kind of a little bit more of what happened there.
Yeah, so I didn't follow that sequence of events. I didn't realize that happened. But that is one of the many reasons why more and more you see campaigns shifting towards daily reveals and away from stretch goals. Many campaigns still use stretch goals, but daily reveals have very often become the norm. You're able to maintain that excitement. Look, something new popped up today. Look, keep tuning into the campaign. Pop into midday. Pop in a week from now. See what's popped up in the past 4 days. But that allows you to engage that daily concept and that continued release of stuff without engaging in games where you potentially have to backtrack on things you've done. The stretch goal game can be a very exciting game, but it can also be a very dangerous game when you do things like this. When you're like, hey, $500,000 stretch goal, and you're like, the campaign's never going to hit $500,000. You're like, we screwed up, and now we have to decide how we tell you that we screwed up, because you're not getting, but we want to give it to you. We want to keep this exciting, and now we have to revise things.
And that is very interesting that they did it based on the number of backers, not the amount pledged.
Yeah, so that is not necessarily as common, but it certainly is done. I would say it's not the go-to, but it's definitely been done. Social stretch goals, shares, pledge, Facebook likes, all those things. There's all different ways to do them, but they all have the same problem. If you give your audience a goal and you miscall the reality, the realisticness of that goal, you wind up in a tough situation no matter how you deal with it. All
right, and our next question is from the Jones Turtle. I don't think I've seen you do a video about hosting a game night. Based on some comments you made recently, I started wondering what snacks you think are good for game night, and now I'm wondering about what other game night advice you had as well.
This could be like 3 videos in and of itself, so I'm going to try to keep it
I know.
Yeah. So, snacks at game night. Meg, I'm going to let you take the snacks at game night, and I'll have one thing to add, but I don't do as much snacks at game night. So,
Yeah.
Meg, what are your snack suggestions?
Snacks are hard. So snacks you want to go with like things that are finger foods that are not messy. So one of the things that I love is to do nachos because it has the melted cheese on it, and I usually get the scoops and I'll make nachos for everybody, and then you all have like your individual ones. Candy is great. Candy is something that you can pass around the table and won't spill or really make a mess. You know, all different kinds. That's something lovely to have. But yeah, I would think for snacks at the table, any kind of chips or anything like that is bad. I know I said nachos, but the cheese keeps them together. Regular chips, crumbs are gonna get everywhere. Anything that breaks, not good. What do you think, Alex?
There's a reason I let you handle this question, because all the things you said are already giving me anxiety.
I know, they're all things that I've eaten at your table.
Oh, we've had conversations. We've had conversations. For me, the things I've had in the past for game night, I've said traditionally there's 2 things I've had, and they're both Jewish foods, but there's kugel and cholent. And both those things are... Meg, you've actually had kugel, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I find kugel and cholent are both kind of... They're more homey foods, but they're kinds of things you throw in a crock pot, you throw it in the oven, and then you're able to serve like a nice hot, like kind of semi-snack, semi-meal that is not messy at all, because you're eating it with like eating out of a bowl, a plate, with a spoon, a fork, and all that. Keeps the mess nice and whatever, and it's kind of is a... a hangout food, culturally speaking. So that's traditionally what I've done. Again, this is not finger foods in the slightest, and nice and safe, but I usually don't do a lot. Usually I'm more of a drinks person, have your soda, your drink, your seltzer, your alcohol if you want it. Those are things that can be more contained without causing snack issues in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. As far as the other
when you have
things,
enough time, I'm a big fan of playing a game, breaking to cook and eat with everybody, and then playing another game, but that would need, an entire day to be able to be gaming and stuff.
Yeah. As far as other game night advice, I'm going to keep this limited, because again, there could be so much here, but I'll say that a few things offhand. Maybe I'll keep it to 3 things, and I don't know what they're going to be, but let's see how they go. Number 1 is pick the games in advance. Pick the games in advance based on who's there. It'll make your game night a whole lot more focused and a whole lot less than an hour and a half of people deciding what to play while you punch, set up, and possibly have to reread the rules. So pick the game in advance based on the players who are there. Number 2, kind of set realistic expectations about when the game is starting. Not necessarily when the game night is starting. I'd actually recommend, honestly, like to a certain extent, having a buffer. Like, hey, we're starting to hang out at 8:30, game starting at 9 o'clock. That gives a window to an extent, but also kind of sets the bar to a degree. And going back to the game selection, I will often try, I can't always do it, but I'll often try to pick a game that has leeway for someone not showing up. So if there's 4 of us, I'll pick a game that's good at 4, but also functions at 3. That way I can have the game set up, I'm prepped to go, and if somebody is running too late, then I can start without them and still have a good time. And that does happen. My group traditionally does know that if you're 5 minutes late, I don't care. If you're 10, 15 minutes late, you've decided to make everyone else wait, and like we don't know when you're showing up, so like at a certain point we just start, because you have to be respectful of other people's time. And then for number 3...
And do you pre-set up the game, Alex?
Yes.
I don't always. It depends on what it is.
I always aim to. There are times I'm finishing it up as people are there. There are times where I misjudged how much time there is to read the rules and set up. So there's certainly exceptions, but generally yes. The third thing, and a big one, is kind of goes hand in hand with pick the game, but I'm just thinking on the fly here, so it is what it is. But the third one is pick the game based on the people coming and not based on your preferences. Do not pick a game based on what you're trying to table. Pick a game based on what others might enjoy, and if it happens to be something you're trying to table, great. There's nothing worse than having 5 people gather around the table for a game of Twilight Imperium because you decided that was the good thing that you wanted to play, but half the people playing are traditionally used to playing codenames. Pick the game that works for the people who are showing up at your game night. That's how you get them to show up again at your game night.
And I would say, personally, this is for anyone listening, for any game night you go to, walk into it trying to be the best player possible. And I don't mean making the best decisions. I mean, if someone does something that you don't like and they didn't even realize, you don't need to attack them or start, messing with their plans. A lot of people can take things personally, especially over the course of a game night. And we're all just here to play games and have fun. And if someone does something to cut you off that you wanted, it was probably a mistake. They probably didn't even do it on purpose. And if they did, you're playing a competitive game and you should have picked co-op. So That's my best advice, is just be a good sport about playing a game, because remember, you're playing a game with your friends and you want to be invited back.
Yeah, completely agree. Hard agree.
One other thing that I'll say is I believe this has been a topic for our weekly live, so we may or may not link it down below, depending on if one of the two of us on this call right now remembers to link it, but if we do, that's an hour-long video where not the entire hour is about that discussion, but a good chunk of it is about a discussion about what to do for game nights.
Sounds good.
Okay. Our next question is, Alex, isn't there an obligation for Gamefound to shut down a campaign like The Wilderness, just to make sure no backers will lose their money?
So, I'm going to answer that in two parts. It's always tricky answering Gamefound questions, trying to figure out what people are comfortable with me saying and not comfortable with me saying.
I know. This is quite a week for you not to be prepped. I was going to let you pass on this one if you wanted to.
Ask on anything. I don't think believe in questions being off limits. I'm an adult and I can say I'm not going to answer that question if I want to not answer that question.
That's fair.
But, so to answer that question, so first of all, personally on my end, so I work for Gamefound. Let's give some context. Let me talk from my perspective and forget Gamefound's policies for a second. So, my perspective as an employee of Gamefound, I was never worried about The Wilderness because The Wilderness was never going to fund. The Wilderness, we talked about this last week, but that was a campaign that launched and then the creators just straight up disappeared. And as a result of them disappearing, they just didn't post updates, they didn't write in comments, they just launched the campaign and no communication from there on in. That's bad. That's very, very, very bad. That's a big red flag to me in so many ways. As a creator, as a backer, as an employee of Gamefound, that is a big red flag to me in so many ways. I just wasn't worried about it because the campaign wasn't funding. The funding was going down. So there's never a risk of anyone losing their money unless, and this is an unless the campaign's slowly going down and then, like, the last day the creators pop in and they contribute $6,000 themselves and then they can run away with everyone's money. Theoretically, that's doable. And also theoretically, Gamefound has the capacity to see that before things get too harsh and then not distribute the money. Like, Gamefound does have to distribute the funds to the creator, so there is that lock in place so that things will still be safe in that case. So
they're not immediately paid for the project.
Correct. So that's all hypothetically speaking as far as things go. As far as the actual aspect of of The Wilderness, this is where I'm not sure what Gamefound as an entity is comfortable saying. What I will say is, in the last days of the campaign, internally, we had a conversation around it, and I don't know what the end result was because I'd have to go check the campaign page. Like, is the campaign page up? I don't know if you can check it even easily. I don't know whether the campaign page is or isn't up. We all agreed that it wasn't funding and it wasn't a threat to anyone. But from Gamefound's side, I will say that we are not okay with a creator simply not providing updates or not being there. We're not okay with the creator not being there. And I cannot make guarantees what will and won't happen, but if anyone ever sees a campaign on Gamefound without any activity or action, bring it to my attention and likely something will be done. Gamefound is not okay with it. I can't guarantee what individual policy we'll take in every instance, but no, we're not okay with it.
Alright. You heard it here first, folks. Alex, Matthias N says, can't see if you have covered Chance for the Old Ones. Any hope to have it in a video? Have you covered it?
Chaos for the Old Ones or Chance for the Old Ones?
They said Chance for the Old Ones.
I've never heard of that.
Okay, we haven't heard of it. Perhaps you will hear more about it next week.
I have to look into that. Chaos Chance for the Old Ones. I'm going to look into it. Let's do the next week question.
So our next question is from Foodie Oboist. Fromage and Flock Together both launched this morning and were fully backed within minutes to hours. Have you given your thoughts on either of these two yet? Which I believe you have, so I just wanted to give you time to shout out.
So I have given thoughts to both of those as a reviewer. So as a reviewer, both those have been on my channel already and covered. As a to back or not to back, those are actually both in next week's to back or not to back, so you'll be able to see them there. But the short,
lovely. This was like a little premonition.
Premonition to back or not to back. Premonition, that is the question. So very short notes on both is, I enjoyed both those games. I'm not yet in love with either of those games, but I enjoyed both. Fromage, this as a reviewer first. Fromage is a cheese-making game with worker placements. Definitely some clever things going on. More than happy to play that one. If anyone wanted to play it, if you were like, oh my gosh, the idea of a cheese-making game and worker placement, I want to try this out. It's got a rondelle and circle of things. I'd be like, great, let me show it.
I want to eat cheese with it.
Oh, well, I actually can't play with you because I have to send it on to the next person. But in theory, I'd be more than happy to play with you. I enjoyed it. And then, aspects of the game didn't necessarily elevate its love for me. Right now it's a 3.5 out of 5. I could see it growing, but I don't think it would. Then the Flock Together, on the other hand, as a creator, it was one that it was doing a lot of things I really liked. My personal critique was I felt too much of the game was spent gathering food to actually prep for all the actions that cost food, and healing yourself cost food, and so much of the game felt like it was about food management, and that wasn't just as much fun to me. The game was doing cool things to the point that I still gave it a 3.5 out of 5 because there were aspects of the game that I really enjoyed, but ultimately for me that was one I'd be a drop more reluctant to play as eagerly. I would say the highs of Flock Together are a little better than the highs of Fromage, but the tediousness of food gathering make it so that I'd be a bit more resistant to playing. And then if you want the to back, not to back thoughts, stay tuned this Monday.
Well, if the options are either playing a game with a plate of cheese next to it or playing a game with a bird next to you, I would take the cheese.
Cheese does not give me anxiety. A bird next to the game does give me anxiety.
All right, so our final question comes from the Professor Meg herself. This was a question that came up while you and I were having a discussion, Alex, but this was regarding the Keymaster lawsuit. So not specifically the Keymaster lawsuit, but in general we had a discussion of, as a board game player, does the politics or issues within a publisher matter to you? Because for me, while I was aware of what was going on, I wasn't sure how I was directly affected. And I think you had a really great answer, so I just wanted to talk about that a little bit more.
Sure. So yeah, we started this discussion, and I remember mid-discussion I was like, this is great for the series, we should do it then. But yes. Effectively, so there's different parts of that question. There's politics, and then there's issues within a company. Those are different categories. Let's start with issues within the company, because that's what's going on here. In the case of Keymaster, there's an internal lawsuit between the original owners and founders. That's an internal issue that I hope that justice is served, but I'm not present. I don't know what justice consists of in this case. What I can say is that as a consumer, do I care, when I'm buying a game off Target's shelf, do I care about the issues going on within a company? Not particularly. The only way I can possibly consider caring is in terms of the longevity of the product line. So, for example, if I'm pulling 7 Wonders off the shelf, I'm probably fine. If I'm pulling Lorcana off the shelf, for example, Lorcana is actually a good example. Mm-hmm. They had a lawsuit going on. Buying into Lorcana while there's a lawsuit going on with Upper Deck does have the risk as a consumer of, okay, I have this product in front of me now, but am I buying into an ongoing product that will continue to exist, or is this thing going to shut down because of a lawsuit? So the only real issue there is the ongoing product longevity and the concern for how that's going to play out. So it helps to be aware for that kind of thing. But a standalone product, it kind of doesn't matter that much. It matters a little bit, maybe if the company has issues, maybe parts replacements. There are factors, but it doesn't matter that much. And crowdfunding, on the other hand, crowdfunding is an area where it does matter. If your game doesn't exist, if you are paying money today for a game that you're hoping to get in a year or a year and a half, whatever it is, ongoing issues within a company that potentially have a sense of fear or threat around the sustainability of the company, or issues that can happen, those are things. There's a famous game. It's a famous game called, I want to say called Upper. Oh my gosh, I don't remember the name of the game. It's a war game. Upfront, maybe Upfront.
Someone's gonna put it in the comments below. I know it.
Someone will put it in the comments, but it's a famous game that's been out for a while. It's an older game. It's hard to track down, and there was a company that did a crowdfunding campaign around it. And then there were issues with a lawsuit. They owed someone else money, and then the backers just didn't get their game. Backers paid a lot of money and didn't get the game because of an internal lawsuit. That can happen, and so in crowdfunding, there's more of a risk to that happening. So that's kind of answers the issues within a company. Politics are a whole different conversation. The politics within a company kind of up to you to determine how you care about that. I mean, Chick-fil-A is going to be a classic example of this. Chick-fil-A has their own politics, and then there's people who just want a Chick-fil-A sandwich. There's people who want a Chick-fil-A sandwich but feel guilty about the politics. There's people who will not touch Chick-fil-A sandwiches for a 10-foot pole because it's too sensitive to them. Politics are going to be very much be an internal discussion as far as how much you care and how much that affects, it's a classic, the art, how much can you separate the art from the artist? It's a classic conversation that's always present, and sometimes it comes down to how good the art is and how bad the artist was.
Right. That's very true. Well, that is all of the questions that we have for today. Thank you, Alex, for answering all of them. If anyone has any future questions, you can leave them. Most of them. You can leave them down below. And you can also leave any questions you'd like in this week's upcoming To Back or Not To Back, which will be posted on Monday, right, Alex?
Yes, it will.
Spoiler alert, you guys will always know now if To Back or Not To Back is coming on Friday, because we'll confirm it here for you. But yeah, that is the question. Thank you all for watching. I've been Professor Meg.
I'm Alex Ratcliffe.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye.